Everyone. We will give folks a few more moments to join and we will start shortly. All right. Again, hello everyone and welcome. Thank you for joining us today. My name is Alex Fabisovich. I'm the head of fraud risk here at Unit21. I'm a fraud preventioner for the past 16 years, did fraud operations, analytics, leading teams, designing fraud strategies. Been with Unit21 for the past 4 years. Uh, I'm joined today by my good friend and our head of solution engineering, Connor Snodgrass. Connor, would you like to say a few words about yourself?
Yeah, thanks, Alex. My name's Connor, everybody. I've been with Unit 21 for almost past 5 years. Really enjoy working on, building solutions for our customers to help them fight fraud.
Thank you so much, Connor. Always great to have you as my co-host. Today we're going to dive into the power of Unit 21's rule engine, focusing on velocity and real-time rules, but also showcasing you all the different cool products and features that we have developed in the past year. Let's put it that way. Before we get started, a few housekeeping items. So this session is being recorded and will be shared with the audience. Connor and I will hold a live Q&A at the end of the webinar. So if you have any questions, don't put them in the chat. Use the Q&A button on the right side of your screen. It will help us to manage the questions as they come. If you're experiencing any technical difficulties, please scroll down to the FAQ section of the page. You will see some information there that will help you tackle those technical difficulties. And if you scroll all the way to the bottom, there are a lot of useful resources for you to read and go through or save for later as you listen to the webinar. So I say, let's get started. And this time we're going to start with some poll questions for our audience. So we will have you go to the poll tab on the right hand of the screen. And we have three questions from you. So let's give you folks a few moments to answer those. And we will circle back to those answers as we proceed with the webinar. So question number one is, how quickly can you currently deploy or adjust detection rules in your system? Question number two would be, how typically makes rule changes in your environment? Who typically makes rule changes in your environment? And the third question is, what is your biggest barrier to rapid rule updates? So I will give a minute for folks who answers those three questions before we continue. All right, I see some very interesting results trickling in. All right, so let's move forward. So a quick introduction to Unit 21 for those of you who are not familiar with our company. So let's deep dive into how Unit 21 approach risk and compliance in modern financial ecosystem. And what you see on the screen is our end-to-end infrastructure. So how we ingest, analyze, detect, and act on risk signals all in one platform. And I want you to think of Unit 21 first and foremost as being very data agnostic. Um, from the very first days of Unit 21, we understood that financial institutions hold vast amounts of data, and it can be, third-party data signals, your KYC, KYB data, transactional data, historical activities of your users, event logs, how users interacting on your different apps that you offer to them. Those types of data are usually siloed. They sit in different databases. Different teams have different access to them. And when agents or analysts who work for the risk and compliance departments need access to those data sets, it's not always available. And if it's available on different systems and different mainframes. So uh, the core offering of Unit 21 is to being able to ingest all the relevant data for the risk and compliance work for your financial institution, and being able to manage the investigation all under one roof while having all the relevant data available for the agents. What you see at the center of the screen is the core of our risk and compliance infrastructure. So on a very high level with Unit 21, we offer AI agents to automate and to alert triage, case management for investigations, and the flow really can start with like alert turns into a case, and a case end up turning into a filing with the regulator. We have transaction monitoring either asynchronously or in real time, which we will heavily discuss today. We offer device intelligence for behavioral and fraud signals, customer risk rating to measure entity level risk, watch list screening for sanctions and PEP, and we have a fraud consortium product for shared intelligence where financial institutions can participate in a gift to get model and share information about how and where exactly fraud is happening. The outputs of this operational framework is usually either direct filings with the regulators or taking data analysis via our dashboard or exporting the results of the investigations into external reports and then have them work on third-party systems, and also taking automated actions on the back end of the financial institutions via webhooks. For example, if you want to create some friction for your customer as a result of an investigation, maybe you need to put a hold on the account, freeze the account, maybe cancel a card. All those things are happening today with our existing customers. Now, now I want to talk about our product philosophy. Early days with Unit 21, we understood that when we build products and features for financial institutions, we need to have a different approach. And our approach since very early days was we tried to put the agent or the analyst in the center, and we always ask ourselves what the people who will work the system actually gain from it. So how do we create enablement by developing new products and new features? And what you see on the screen in front of you is our core pillars for developing products. So the first one is control. There's no black boxes, there's no scores that no one can explain why a certain score is high or a certain score is low. We are great believers in user-led rule building. So we train and encourage our customers to develop and design their own strategies by creating rules, simple rules or sophisticated ones. Explainability is pretty much everything that happens in the system, whether it's how the agent is executing a certain investigation, or maybe how a certain alert has been treated, dispositioned, or escalated. Everything that's being done in the system is backed by audit logs. So whenever you have an audit or you need to show the regulators how certain things are happening, or are you really executing your own internal policies, you have clear audit logs that can showcase the work that's being done in the system. The third part is agility. We have many different ways to test before you deploy. We understand that different financial institutions have different control managements in place. So if you want to put a rule in production or you want to change a rule that is currently live in production, there's many different tools for you to do that, whether it's from using a sandbox environment, using a validation mode, shadow modes, which are pretty much just like a production rule without generating alerts. So you can conduct your A/B testing or maybe do above and below threshold sort of strategy when you start thinking about new rules or new strategies. And the fourth pillar is the outcome driven. So basically, we always try to see how can we help you reduce false positives and actually make time for the alerts that matter so you can focus on what's really important and really where it helps you to either detect the money laundering or prevent the high risk transactions from keep happening and block them in as fast as possible and even in real time. Now, today we're going to discuss two core categories of the transaction monitoring that we offer. So our rule engine is very sophisticated. Some will say it's one of the sophisticated rules engines on the market today. But really, the two core categories that we see being adopted today by our customer is the dynamic model builder, which allow you to deploy rules in a very sophisticated way. It's almost like a SQL query that you write, but you don't really need to write a code. And once we get to the demo part, Connor will showcase you how the dynamic model builder is working. But I want you to think about it in a data way. So as long as a data element is available either on the entity level or what you might call your customer on a transactional level, and that data element can be either a transaction or even a non-transactional event. So things like, password changes, PII changes, login sessions from either the web or the app that you offer to your end users. All that can be taken into consideration when you're building rules. And the dynamic model builder is a very powerful way for you to drill down as deep as you want and create very sophisticated strategies. The other part of our transaction monitoring offering is our real-time rules, or what we call RTR. The differentiation here is that we offer you with our real-time API a response as fast as 250 milliseconds of pass or fail. And what you can do with that response is basically start the cycle of prevention. I'm a big believer that when you start doing fraud prevention or you just going from fraud detection to fraud prevention, real-time rule engine is your first step in preventing the fraud from happening. So once you develop the rule, the transactions created, you send us the API call, we give you a response of pass or fail, you can take that response and decide what you want to do with it. And Connor will showcase in the demo part of this webinar later how a real-time rule looks like and our very unique offering of velocity. Now, if you think about it, and if you've been around for a couple decades, real-time transaction monitoring is not new by any means. It's been around since probably the 90s. Uh, the one differentiator was always that companies who wanted to do real-time monitoring, they would usually go and implement a vendor on the premises, just for latency reasons. It was very, very challenging for many, many years to be able to create a real-time solution and give you a fast enough response so you can actually go and decline the transaction. Because if you think about it, if you have a customer who, at the store and they're swiping a card, or God forbid, let's say their card was stolen, and now the person who stole the card is swiping the card, the authorization flow is very quick. So you don't have a lot of bandwidth to be able to think, hey, do we want to decline the transaction? Maybe you want to approve it. Maybe you want to put a hold. Maybe you want to send a text message to the customer. It was very challenging for many, many years to do it without an implementation on premises. And what we did is we put a lot of engineering resources into our RTR model. And now we're able to give you a response as fast as 250 milliseconds of whether or not you should approve or decline a transaction, which is a real game changer for many financial institutions because let's be honest, nobody wants to implement on premises. I'm sure that no one of the audience wants me to come to your bank and start, connecting wires on your server in the back room. So that's a real game changer and really allows many financial institutions go from fraud detection to fraud prevention very seamlessly. Now, let's move to some practical implementation tips. Quite often, when we start implementation process with customers, customers will ask us, okay, well, what are the best use cases for the dynamic model builder, or what are the best use cases for, the real-time rules engine? And the answer is before you on the screen. I would say the dynamic model builder is a great way for you to build your core strategy. So all the rules that will hold the vast majority of your transaction monitoring requirements, whether it's for money laundering or fraud, all all those rules can be handled by the dynamic model builder. It has great capabilities to do, analysis. You can summarize, count, and pretty much take any mathematical function on any type of data that you already have and you ingest into Unit 21. With the real-time rules, I would say it's important to understand where the risk is for your financial institution, where is your liability, and those high-risk transactions should be flowing through our real-time API in order for us to be able to flag and prevent in real time in case something risky is happening to one of your customers. And that approach really is what we call the layered approach. So not everything have to be synchronous, not everything have to be real time. We usually work with our customers together to define what is the right balance and what is making sense for them in terms of creating a synchronous monitoring or creating a monitoring that actually results in a friction for the end user. Now, with the demo part of this webinar that Connor will show us in a few moments, we will cover a few very unique use cases of what Unit 21 can offer. So the first one will be a consortium rule. As I mentioned earlier, we offer a fraud consortium product to our customers, and a fraud consortium is basically a network of financial institutions who are sharing information about the users and the way their users conduct fraud or money laundering on the platform. Now, our fraud consortium is a unique model. First of all, it's free. So you don't have to pay to be a member of the consortium, but it's a give to get model. So if you want to be a member of the consortium, you need to contribute data. We also have a patent, so you don't have to actually share PII, and the data is being encrypted before it's shared to the consortium. So that way, none of the sensitive information of your customers and end users is actually being ingested into the consortium. And what it actually gives you in return is the ability to see, hey, if I have a user who is conducting some type of activity, I can also check if any other members of the consortium have seen this user do something similar, or maybe already close their account, or maybe flag them for a specific type of fraud, which usually provide a great insight and a great way for financial institutions to fight fraud together. The second use case will be a real-time rule with velocity. So like I mentioned earlier, real-time rules that implemented not on premises is a challenge by itself. What we offer today is the ability to actually build real-time rules with velocity. So to be able to calculate how certain things happen in the past 10 minutes or in the past 30 minutes or in the past couple of days to create a more sophisticated strategy and not just to be able to flag a single transaction and say, hey, this is more than $20,000 and you want to decline it. We can take previous user activity and historical behavior of that user in order to make a smarter alert generation. With that in mind, we also have a device intelligence offering. So we partnered with a company called Fingerprint, and now customers who choose to use device intelligence through Unit21 get all the best that Fingerprint can offer. So whether it's indication if the browser that the user logged in from has been tampered, or maybe there is a VPN behind it, or maybe it's a Tor browser, or many other different signals now can be directly work with Unit21 and built in into our rule engine, which Connor will show us in a few moments. The third use case will be rules we call graph-based rules. And I want you to think about graph-based rules as your standard unknown network analysis. Network analysis is a great tool to investigate fraud and has been used to investigate fraud and money laundering for years and years and years. What we did with graph-based rules is we took this approach from reactive to proactive. So basically, instead of generating an alert and then try to see if it fits into a network analysis narrative, now you can build a rule that actually looks for similarities in different entities or in different customers where maybe similarity is not supposed to be. This is a great way to detect fraud rings or maybe just relationship between users where we don't expect any relationship. And the final and fourth use case for today is that we will show the dynamic model builder and how we can detect ACH fraud. I know that many of you are waiting and expecting to deploy new strategies and new rules due to new changes and recommendations from Nacho next year. So definitely something to look for in the demo. But I think if you are ready, I am ready. Connor, I think the stage is yours.
All righty, folks. So we'll get started and talk through a couple of different scenarios that Alex has already outlined. The first being our consortium. So one of the best ways that you can leverage Unit21 is participating in our consortium so that you can collaborate with others in the industry to detect fraudsters, money launderers who are trying to cause chaos around the financial industry. The way that this for existing customers, you can get signals for a wide variety of suspicious activities, and you can just set it to any and all as a default, or if there are things that you want to ignore, you can be more particular about the signals that are relevant to you. And this will automatically generate an alert anytime one of your customers is flagged on another platform. Or a better way of stating it is if a user shares an identifier, so a social security number or an email or an address with a customer at another institution that has been flagged, your client will get an alert. The other way that this shows up, and a great way to visualize what this information looks like, is that when you're reviewing an alert or a client profile in Unit21, if you are leveraging the consortium, you'll get signals like this. So if another institution shares a client ID with you, you might get a signal that shows up like this, where you actually get kind of a positive signal that they're out there, have other accounts, and are on good behavior. But in the event that they're flagged for some activity, in this case, our client Thomas has been flagged on a couple of occasions for check fraud earlier this month. And what we might assume based on this is, that maybe his credentials have been compromised and somebody is out there using Thomas's information all of a sudden to commit check fraud. And we can look into this, reach out, and try to protect Thomas or make sure that he's not the fraudster himself.
And we have a question from Devandra actually about the consortium. So I hope the demo the Connor just showed answered that. As you can see, specifically to the PII question, the PII is being hashed. So as long as all the different members of the consortium send us the data, it's being hashed. On the consortium side of things, it being aggregated under one entity. As you can see on the screen here, the results of the consortium, it won't tell you in which bank or which credit union or fitting company they already transacted or maybe conducted fraud or blocked, but it paints a very clear picture that this user has been active and probably been up to no good in the past couple of months.
Yeah, like Alex mentioned, the Unit21 consortium leverages a proprietary hashing methodology that we developed that allows us to, kind of collect PII signals without Unit21 or the other participants directly having access to the kind of plain text PII, but does preserve our ability to match on PII signals like social or an email address or a phone number, things like that. All right. So next example is going to be our real time rules. So another thing, like Alex mentioned, real time rules have been around for decades. But for a lot of institutions, what that meant was having fairly static controls that were implemented at an on-premise level and typically weren't very flexible. So they were okay at kind of detecting and preventing the most like rudimentary attacks, but they're not as dynamic and flexible. And smart fraudsters figure out ways to get around them. We see this all the time that smart fraudsters are probing and testing and identifying controls and then coming back knowing where the weak points are and exploiting them. So your process and your rules and your procedures need to evolve and be dynamic. Otherwise, you run the risk of having people kind of figure them out and taking advantage. So, with this real-time rule builder, we give you the ability to create these rules, test these rules, deploy these rules, and run them in the cloud so that you can be much more dynamic. Now, an example of a rule that we might run would be, something for ACH fraud. So if we're looking particularly like ACH debits and credits, and what we want to know is, has a customer exceeded a threshold of transactions over the past 7 days? So do we have somebody who's had more than $10,000 worth of ACH transactions in the last 7 days? And we do want to include this latest transaction in that aggregation. So we want to block it if this one exceeds that $10,000 threshold. And so we're going to include this latest incoming transaction in the aggregation. And then we're also going to apply some filters where we care about whether or not this transaction has happened from a suspicious device. And this incorporates our device intelligence solution where we can include information about whether there's a time zone mismatch or it's a high activity device, or it's a jailbroken device, or using an emulator, or any variety of different signals that you can leverage kind of when they're appropriate in the rules that you have to look for account takeovers or somebody who is remotely controlling a device, so that you can try to get ahead of scammers and fraudsters in that way. And it looks like we have um, another couple of questions. So, how do you allow for unique formatting of identifiers, ID numbers, passport numbers instead of social? Um, so actually, this brings up a great point. One thing that we should be kind of transparent about is that as of today, the consortium is a US centric product. So it is US only, not a global product. So we don't account for international identifiers. At some point, that may change and we'll expand, and I'm sure we'll let you know as soon as that happens. Secondly, second question we have is an ETA on shadow mode for real-time rules. I think that's actually um, either gone live or happening very soon. We actually got access to that very recently. So I have the ability to deploy this in shadow mode. And if it's not already available in your environment, I'd reach out to your CSM and ask them about it because this is something that people have been asking for a while.
What a great way to show a new feature, right?
Thank you, Jess, for giving me an opportunity to give some great news. Nora, the Unit21 product, more generally, is a global solution. We've got customers all over the globe. It's exclusively the consortium that is a US-based product for kind of data security and you know privacy reasons.
So for that matter, if you use Unit 21 outside of the US and you identify your customers maybe by a passport number or like a local ID number, driver's license, whatever that might be, we have no problem in ingesting that data. The only thing is that if you are operating outside of the US, you won't have access to the consortium.
Yeah. And a good way to maybe pivot or transition this into the conversation around graph-based rules is that graph-based rules are doing a lot of the same types of things that the consortium does within your own ecosystem. So when you're thinking about, suspicious activity within your own ecosystem, we often think about, maybe clusters of accounts that share an identifier. If you've got two clients that are logging in from the same client fingerprint, same device ID, that's not particularly weird. My partner and I, we both bank with the same institution. We might both log in from a shared iPad or something like that. But if we all of a sudden have a larger cluster of those, this might be a signal that we have, a fraud ring operating on the platform. Um, we can also incorporate other things like social or IP address, but we also do have the ability to bring in a custom field. So if you did want to use an international ID in graph-based rules, you'd be able to do that with custom data. The other thing that you can do here is you can filter entities. So we could say, I want to specifically look for customers that share information with an account that's been banned, for example. And so now instead of just purely looking for a kind of nondescript cluster, we're looking for any customer that share an identifier with a client that's previously been blocked for bad activity. And with this, you kind of have, an internal version of that consortium where you can get alerted anytime customers share information in suspicious ways, share information with suspicious clients, and be proactive about that before you see it in the transactional or other behavioral data. All right. And last thing we've got for you today in the demo is our dynamic model builder. This looks a little bit different than our real-time rule. This is an asynchronous rule, although these can be run as frequently as every 10 minutes, so pretty regularly. And with the dynamic model builder, we can build rules that look for much more complex patterns of activity, And in this particular case, we're looking for a pattern of high ACH volume, as well as deviation from observed patterns of activity. So we've got some relatively static thresholds where, I might want to see, ACH volume above $25,000 or ACH velocity above 20 unique ACH transactions, or we're looking for a significant deviation in velocity or volume. So more than 10 times the 90-day average for either velocity or volume. And you can kind of build these fairly dynamic and or combinations of these parameters to look for the specific patterns of suspicious activity that you want. And within these variables, we can be very, very particular about the types of transactions or the customers or counterparty information or any other information about these transactions, so that you can, as I like to say, kind of go spearfishing rather than trawling for suspicious activity. And we do have a couple more questions. Um, okay. Are the graph-based rules the most commonly used scenario rules? We've seen dynamic rules a bunch, but not so much the scenario rules. I wouldn't necessarily say that they're the most commonly used scenario rule. It is a very popular one, but we have scenario rules for things like ACH fraud, check fraud, general kind of behavioral deviation. Scenario rules generally take the form of what I like to describe as like a Mad Lib style rule. They're very, very easy to use for the purposes that they are intended, where all you have to do is kind of fill in the blanks with what you're looking for. And it's a little bit more out of the box, but they are a little bit more structured. So, unlike the dynamic rules where if we want to add additional conditions, it's quite easy for us to just kind of build exactly what we're looking for. The scenario rules are a little bit more structured in the way that they work, which I think for me as an SE, I spend so much time in the tool that I've gotten a little bit more comfortable with dynamic rules and how to build there. But a lot of our scenario rules are quite popular. And scenario rules also include some of our other specialty rules. So our rule for enhanced due diligence, our watch list rule, our consortium rules as well.
Nora has a question. Can one elect which fields are key identifiers? Can an address be a key identifier that enables to run a report or a graphic for users sharing the same address? That's what graph-based rule is pretty much for. You can choose how to match different entities, either based on address or any other element of their PII, as you can see on the screen. You can have multiple of those as identifier. You can say, hey, address is not enough because I don't know, maybe I have a lot of students who live in dorms and they all live in the same address. Hey, maybe that's not enough, but I want to see if they live in the same address and they use the same IP address and maybe they use the same device. Okay, that's becomes too common. I want to investigate that. So it's very flexible. It's very, very easy to use, as you can see. And Dale is asking about Unit21's behavior based on rules and how to reduce false positive with that. In general, you can aggregate anything you want. So, if you have a user who's been transacting in a certain way in the past, and he's sending the same ACHs, he's sending out the same wires, he's receiving the same deposits, you can pretty much say, hey, this is normal behavior. We want to say anything will be abnormal if it's 100% more than that, if it's 1,000% more than that, if the frequency is too high, you can configure it in a very, very meticulous way for you to design what is actually you want to alert on versus reducing, just creating a list that's not important. Another way you can use Unit 21 is you can also create whitelist or white label customers. For example, if you created an alert and it ended up as a false positive, and you say, hey, for that type of a risk activity, I don't want to flag on that user again or in the next 30 days, you can white label that user, and that user won't be flagged by the same rule again.
Yeah, Alex makes great points on both of those, but I think with the dynamic rule builder and our ability to not just set static thresholds, but set dynamic thresholds that can either be based on observed behavior. So in this case, we're looking at what is their actual observed behavior over the past 90 days, past 6 months, past year, and then let's run these rules that look for deviation from those observed patterns. We can also do this with kind of more static thresholds, but ones that are specific to the client. So for customers, when you're doing onboarding, if you are collecting information like their income or their expected volume, or you could look at like deposit volume. You can use all of those as reference points that are dynamic to each client so that the threshold for a particular rule can be relative to what you would expect based on like that client's profile. And so with all of this, it makes it very easy to say, hey, maybe we still need to have some static threshold that's just like a break glass in case of emergency, but we can set it quite high and then have these dynamic thresholds that are there to flag lower level suspicious activity for clients that we would expect not to be transacting at a really high volume or really high velocity. So I think it's all about being, like I said, trying to go spearfishing instead of just throwing out a big net and then having to sift through all of the resulting alerts to find suspicious activity.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more with you. I want to quick circle back to the polls, the questions that we asked at the beginning of this webinar, and let's just look at the results because they are interesting. So, question number one is who typically make rule changes in your environment, and 74 of the respondents says the compliance and the fraud team, and I'm personally so happy. We've been asking this question for like 4 years, and it always was like engineering and the dev team. So I'm very happy that the majority of you are actually in control of your own of your own rules. It means that you either use Unit 21 or something like a new edge vendor versus using something as a legacy product. But as you can see, if you still rely on engineering and developers, as Connor just showed us, it's very straightforward. It's very easy. It's very intuitive to build and deploy rules with Unit 21. So question number two is, what is your biggest barrier to rapid rule updates? And here we have number one is risks of false positives, which makes sense. And for those use cases, exactly, we have the validation mode, which allow you to do backtesting and see, okay, this is my expected results. And this is how the results would look like if we turn on the rule today in production. You can also use shadow modes if you're still not sure. If you say, okay, maybe I want to run it live without generating rules and distributing alerts to the team members, just make sure the rule is actually working. So a lot of different tools for you to manage those false positive. Not to mention our fairly new and revamped dashboards where you can actually track on the performance of each rule, the performance of each analyst and team, and see where exactly you have room for improvements, either training better, for the team, either improving some rules. The dashboards can provide great insights for that. But second and third places, engineering bandwidth and lack of sandbox and testing environment. I mean, we already spoke about it. I think with Unit 21, it really, if the implementation is done right, in taking into consideration all the available data sources in the financial institution and making sure they're flowing and configured in the right way in Unit 21, you really don't need engineers to keep running that system. And question number three was, how quickly can you currently deploy and adjust detection rules in your system? So number one is within minutes, which again makes me very happy. I've used those legacy systems. I know how challenging it can be to deploy a rule and then wait for 7 business days to it to go live. And by the time it goes live, the fraud is already evolved and the rule is not relevant anymore. But as you can, as Connor showed you, it's fairly easy to build a rule, deploy it, back test it, and then if you're happy with the result, just click activate and the rule is live, generating alerts into the designated queue that you define. So only the people who have the specific training to handle those type of alerts will get those alerts generated for their queue and work those alerts. So I like those answers, and thank you so much for participating in our small poll. So I think in terms of the demo part, this is what we have for you for today. And I hope you enjoyed this webinar. I would like to officially invite you to join Connor and myself on November 5th, where we will deep dive in how to prepare for not just new operating rules, whether you're an ODFI or an RDFI. There's definitely new things you will have to start monitoring, and Connor and myself will do the very best to show you how it can be done with Unit 21 and what you should prepare for in general. So the links for registration will be available on unit21.ai, also on our social media on LinkedIn. But yeah, we hope to see you on November 5th as well. So I will thank you for joining us today. It's been a pleasure to talk about our rule engine. Connor, thank you so much for the great demo. Always insightful and always great to see how easy it is to use the Unit 21. And I hope to see you all on November 5th.